The Unknown Life of Christ. This book was found in the public domain, public access. Apparently the copyright notice and comment below provided by a certain person said the copyright was in the 1800s. So there shouldn't be any copyright claim, copyright strike, because after 50 years, if they don't renew their copyright, well then it's basically open. No one has their copyright unless somebody else re-copyrights it. So it should be good. We've brought it to this video review for educational purposes alone. We've read this book before and found it quite interesting. We have done research on it prior. This is The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ, apparently, or supposedly, by Nicolas Notovitch, 1858. We went to find some background information on this particular author. We found some, and it basically says Shulim or Nikolai Alexandrovich Notovitch, Russian, in the Russian there, August 13th, 1858, probably died after 1934. Known in the West as Nicolas Notovitch, was a Crimean Jewish adventurer who claimed to be a Russian aristocrat, spy and journalist. Notovitch is known for his 1894 book, claiming that during the unknown years of Jesus he left Galilee for India and studied with Buddhists and Hindus before returning to Judea. Notovitch's claim was based on a document he said he had seen at the Hemis Monastery while he stayed there. The consensus view amongst modern scholars is that Notovitch's account of the travels of Jesus to India was a hoax. Notovitch also wrote some political books on the role of Russia in war. Life of Saint Isa. According to Notovitch's writing, after breaking his leg in India and while recovering from it at the Hemis Monastery in Ladakh, Hemis Monastery is a Himalayan Buddhist monastery, Gompa of the Drupal lineage in Hemis on the bank of the Indus River, Ladakh, India, situated 45 kilometers from Leh. It was re-established in 1672 by the Ladakhi King Singye Namgyal. The annual Hemis festival honouring Pamad Sabhava, etc. So that's it there. So if it was a fake, it was a hoax, perhaps somebody there from there would one day say, no, we actually have records of it. This scroll or these accounts, etc., that he looked at. Perhaps that might happen, perhaps it has, perhaps it hasn't. According to Notovitch's writings, after breaking his leg in India and while recovering from it at the Hemis Monastery in Ladakh, he learned of the Tibetan manuscript Life of Saint Isa, best of the sons of men, Isa being the Arabic name of Jesus in Islam. Notovitch's account and the supposed translation of the alleged manuscripts were published in French in 1894 as La vie inconnuée de Jésus Christ, The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ. It was translated into English, German, Spanish and Italian. The account claims that during his unknown years, Jesus left Galilee for India and studied with Buddhists and Hindus there before returning to Judea. Allegations of forgery and alleged confession. Notovitch's book generated controversy as soon as it was published, although Francis' young husband, that's a strange name, we did know a person called Desmond Go to Bed, so can't be any stranger than that, corroborated that he encountered Notovitch near Skardu after the latter had visited Kashmir. This was before he went to the monastery. The philologist Max Muller we've read a lot about that guy in different books, who was a comparative philologist and Orientalist of German origin. He was one of the founders of the Western academic disciplines of Indology and religious studies. Muller wrote both scholarly and popular works on the subject of Indology and so forth. He expressed incredulity at Notovitch's account and suggested that either the author was the victim of a practical joke or had fabricated the evidence, writing, taking it for granted that M. Notovitch is not a liar, we cannot help thinking that the Buddhist monks of Ladakh and Tibet must be wags who enjoy mystifying inquisitive travellers, and that M. Notovitch fell far too easy a victim to their jokes. Muller then wrote to the head Lama at Hemis Monastery to ask about Notovitch's story. The head Lama replied that there had been no Western visitor at the monastery in the previous 15 years, during which time he had been the head Lama, and that there was no such manuscript. Archibald Douglas, who was a professor of English and history at the Government College in Agra, visited the monastery in 1895 to interview the head Lama, who again stated that Notovitch had never been there and that no such writing existed. Other European scholars also opposed Notovitch's account, and Indologist Leopold von Schroeder, a Indologist from the Russian Empire who later worked in Austria-Hungary, called the story a big fat lie. Wilhelm Schneemelcher upheld that Notovitch's accounts were quickly exposed as fabrications and that to date no one else had even glimpsed the alleged documents. Notovitch initially defended his story, but upon further scrutiny allegedly confessed to fabrication or fabricating the evidence. Kashmiri writer Fida Muhammad Hasnain was a Kashmiri writer, lecturer and Sufi mystic. He was born in 1924 in Srinagar, Kashmir, as a child of school teachers. His father fought with the British Indian forces in the Boer War in South Africa in 1902, and he graduated from some university. He explained Notovitch's defence of his account, stating, Notovitch responded publicly by announcing his existence, along with the names of people he met on his travels in Kashmir and Ladakh. He also offered to return to Tibet in company of recognised Orientalists to verify the authenticity of the verses contained in his compilation. In the French journal La Paix, he affirmed his belief in the Orthodox Church and advised his detractors to restrict themselves to the simple issue of the existence of the Buddhist scrolls at Hemis. Bart D. Ehrman, top theologian, biblical scholar and agnostic atheist, says that today there is not a single recognised scholar on the planet who has any doubts about the matter. The entire story was invented by Notovitch, who earned a good deal of money and a substantial amount of notoriety for his hoax. Indian claims of corroboration. Swami Abhedananda, who was a colleague of Max Muller, he was born Kali Prasad Chandra, was a direct disciple of the 19th century mystic Ramakrishna Paramahansa and the founder of Ramakrishna Vedanta Math. Swami Vivekananda sent him to the West to head the Vedanta Society of New York in 1897. Okay, so that particular man was a colleague of Max Muller and initially sceptical of Notovitch's claims. Claimed to have visited the Hemis Monastery in 1922 whilst travelling through Kashmir and Tibet to verify the reports of Notovitch that he had heard the previous year in the US. He claimed that lamas at the monastery confirmed to him that Notovitch was brought to the monastery with a broken leg and he was nursed there for a month and a half. They also told him that the Tibetan manuscript on Isa was shown to Notovitch and its contents interpreted so that he could translate them into Russian. This manuscript was shown to Abhedananda, which had 14 chapters containing 223 couplets, slokas. The Swami had some portions of the manuscript translated with the help of a lama, about 40 verses of which appeared in the Swami's travelogue. The original Pali manuscript, allegedly composed after the resurrection of Jesus, was said to be in the monastery of Mabur near Lhasa. After his return to Bengal, the Swami asked his assistant Bhairab Chaitanya to prepare a manuscript of the travelogue based on the notes he had taken. The manuscript was published serially in Visvani, a monthly publication of the Ramakrishna Vedanta Samiti in 1927, and subsequently published in a book form in Bengali. The fifth edition of the book in English was published in 1987, which also contains an English translation of Notovitch's book as an appendix. Paramahansa Yogananda wrote that Nicolas Notovitch also corroborated Notovitch's and Abhedananda's story during his visit to Tibet in the mid-1920s. Yogananda also wrote that records of Jesus' years in India were preserved in Puri. Okay. According to the Bharati Krishna Tirtha, and that after leaving Puri, Jesus spent 6 years with the Sakya Buddhist sect in Nepal and Tibet before returning to Palestine. He added that the overall value of these records is inestimable in a search for the historical Jesus. Other authors' references: author Alice Dunbar Nelson was an American poet, journalist and political activist among the first generation of African Americans born free in the southern United States after the end of the American Civil War. She was one of the prominent African Americans probably involved in the liberation of slaves or something like that. The end of slavery probably. Includes a review of the unknown life of Jesus Christ in the 1895 collection Violets and Other Tales. In 1899, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who was an Indian religious leader and the founder of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam, he claimed to have been divinely appointed as the promised Messiah and Mahdi. Okay, so this guy's saying, yeah, I'm the Messiah, all this sort of stuff, which is the metaphorical second coming of Jesus. Is that Matthew Isla? Yeah, okay. Probably in fulfillment of the Quran or something. Not really sure on that one. Okay, yeah, he wrote Jesus in India, published in 1908, claiming that Jesus travelled to India after surviving his crucifixion, but disagreeing with Notovitch not before his attempted execution. Somebody tried to kill him? Or was it this guy? Okay, well, just read that again. 1899, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad wrote Jesus in India, published in 1908, claiming that Jesus travelled to India after surviving his crucifixion. Okay, but disagreement with Notovitch not before his attempted execution. So he went there after his crucifixion, apparently. Other authors have taken these themes and incorporated it into their own works. For example, in her book, The Lost Years of Jesus, documentary evidence of Jesus' 17-year journey to the East, Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Did she ever claim that she was a prophet? Was an American spiritual leader, author, orator and writer. In 1963, she married Mark L. Prophet, who had founded the Summit Lighthouse in 1958. Mark and Elizabeth had 4 children. Elizabeth, after her second husband's death, etc., etc. So, her husband's name was Prophet. How canny is that? Uncanny is that? Asserts that Buddhist manuscripts provide evidence that Jesus travelled to India, Nepal, Ladakh and Tibet. In this book, Jesus lived in India. German author Holger Kirsten, a German writer on myth, legend, religion and esoteric subjects. He's best known for speculative books about the time Jesus spent in India. Kirsten's views have received no support from mainstream scholarship. Okay, he promoted the ideas of Nicolas Notovitch and Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. Gerald O. Collins classified Kirsten's works as a repackaging of the same stories. In his 2002 comedic novel Lamb, The Gospel According to Biff, Christ's Childhood, Pal, a novel by American writer Christopher Moore, published in 2002. In his work, the author seeks to fill in the lost years of Jesus through the eyes of Jesus' childhood, Pal, Levi Bar Alphaeus, who is called Biff. absurdist author Christopher Moore parodies the notion of Jesus travelling to India. Other writings. In 1906, Notovitch published a book in Russian and French pleading for Russia's entry into the Triple Entente. This describes the informal understanding between the Russian Empire, the French Third Republic, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. It was built up upon the Franco-Russian alliance of 1894, the Entente Cordiale of 1904 between France and England. Maybe the Russians. France and Britain. It is entitled in French. He also wrote biographies of Tsar Nicolas II, was the last reigning Emperor of Russia, King of Congress, Poland, and Grand Duke of Finland from 1 November 1894 until his abdication on 15th March 1917. During his reign, Nicholas gave support to economic and political reforms that were promoted. And Alexander III. He had also written this in French. It looks like something like Europe under the veil of something. I don't know what the last word is. References, citations, sources, and further reading, and external links. So, in sum, this guy made these claims, and they were said by the actual monks with Lama there. He never visited. No such man existed. And then this other guy tried to get on a bandwagon, and he reckons he went there and he was showing them, right? And someone else backed him up, and someone else backed him up. But most theologians and scholars today say, "Oh, it was a hoax. It was a fake book, fake account, all this sort of stuff. He never actually went there, all this sort of stuff." But this other guy claims, he actually went there because he had a broken leg. They tended to him, and then some lama showed him these scrolls or writings proving that Jesus the Christ had been there. He travelled through there. So let's have a look at the book, The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ, by the discoverer of the manuscript Nicolas Notovitch, translated from the French by Alexina Loranga, 4th edition 1916. Table of contents. Preface. After the close of the Turco-Russian War 1877 to 1878, the author, or this particular person writing this preface, took a series of extended journeys through the Orient, having visited all points of interest in the Balkan Peninsula. They then crossed the Caucasian Mountains into Central Asia and Persia, and finally in 1887 made an excursion into India, the most admired country of the dreams of their childhood. The first object of this journey was to study the customs and habits of the inhabitants of India amid their own surroundings, as well as the grand, mysterious archaeology and the colossal, majestic nature of the country. Wandering without any settled course from one locality to another, this writer at last came to mountainous Afghanistan, where he reached India through the picturesque passes of Balan and then followed the Indus to Rawalpindi, travelled through the Punjab, the country of 5 rivers, visited the Golden Temple of Amritsar, the tomb of Ranjit Singh, king of the Punjab, near Lahore, and proceeded towards Kashmir, the Vale of Eternal Happiness. There, this person began his peregrinations as fancy or curiosity guided or dictated, until he reached the Ladakh, where he intended to make a somewhat lengthy stay before returning to Russia through eastern Turkestan and Karakoram. In the course of one of his visits to a Buddhist convent, he learned from the chief Lama that there existed very ancient memoirs treating of the life of Christ and of the nations of the Occident in the archives of Lhasa, and that a few of the larger monasteries possessed copies and translations of those precious chronicles. There being little probability of his early return to the country, he resolved to delay his departure for Europe and verify these assertions by seeing some of these copies, even though he was obliged to invade every convent as far as Lhasa, a journey far less perilous and difficult to accomplish than we are usually led to believe. Besides this, the author was now so well accustomed to the dangers encountered by the traveller in these regions that they no longer possessed any terrors for him. During his sojourn in Leh, the capital of Ladakh, he visited Hemis, a large convent in the outskirts of the city, where he was informed by the Lama that the monastic libraries contained a few copies of the manuscripts in question. That he might not arouse the suspicion of the authorities in regard to the object of his visit to the convent, and raise no obstacles to a subsequent journey into Tibet as a Russian. On his return to Leh, he announced his immediate departure for India and again left the capital of Ladakh. An unfortunate accident whereby his leg was fractured furnished him with a totally unexpected pretext to enter the monastery, where he received excellent care and nursing, and he took advantage of a short stay among these monks to obtain the privilege of seeing the manuscripts relating to Christ. With the aid of his interpreter, who translated from the Tibetan tongue, he carefully transcribed the verses as they were read by the Lama. Entertaining no doubt of the authenticity of this narrative, written with the utmost precision by Brahmin historians and Buddhists of India and Nepal, his intention was to publish the translation on his return to Europe. With this object in view, he addressed himself to several well-known ecclesiastics, requesting them to revise his notes and tell him what they thought of the matter. Monsignor Platon, the celebrated Archbishop of Kyiv, believed his discovery to be of great importance, but he earnestly tried to dissuade him from giving the memoirs publicity, declaring it would be against his own interest to do so. Why? This the venerable prelate refused to explain. The conversation, however, having taken place in Russia, where censorship would have placed its veto on a work of this kind, he was determined to wait. The author was determined to wait. A year later, he chanced to be in Rome. Here he submitted the manuscript to a cardinal standing high in the estimation of the Holy Father. "Why would you print this?" he said didactically. "Nobody will attach much importance to it, and you will create numberless enemies thereby. You are still young, however. If you need money, I can obtain some compensation for these notes, enough to remunerate you for your loss of time and expenditure." Naturally enough, he refused the offer. Because what would they do? They probably locked him away, never see him ever again. That was probably the whole point of it. Give him some money, he'll take it and then we'll hide it. Lock it away. In Paris, he laid his project before Cardinal Rotelli, whom he had met in Constantinople. He also opposed the publication of his work under pretext that it would be premature. "The Church," he added, "suffers too deeply from this new current of atheistic ideas, and you would only furnish new food to the calumniators and detractors of the evangelical doctrine. I tell you this in the interest of all Christian churches." He then called on M. Jules Simon, who found his communication most interesting, and advised him to consult M. Renan in regard to the best means of publishing these memoirs. The very next day, the author found himself seated in the study of the great philosopher. At the end of the interview, M. Renan proposed that the author should entrust him with the memoirs in question, that he might make a report on them to the Academy. This proposition, as the reader will understand, was most seductive and flattering, yet the author took away the work with him, saying he wished to revise it once more, the fact being that he feared that if he accepted this association, he would only receive the bare honour of discovering the chronicles, while the illustrious author of the Life of Jesus would reap the glory of the publication and of the commentaries. Believing himself sufficiently prepared to publish the narrative by adding his own notes, the author finally declined a courteous offer made to him. That he might not, however, wound the feelings of the great master, whom he deeply respected, he resolved to await his death, which could not be far off, judging from his feebleness. Soon after the death of M. Renan, the author wrote to M. Jules Simon and again sought his advice. His reply was that he should judge for himself of the expediency of giving publicity to the memoirs. The author therefore prepared his notes and then published them, reserving the right to attest the authenticity of these those chronicles. In his commentaries, he carefully developed the arguments which proved the good faith and sincerity of the Buddhist compilers. It only remained for him to add that before criticising his work, scientific societies can, without much expense, organise an expedition whose mission it would be to study those manuscripts in the locality in which they are to be found, and thus verify their historical value. Nicolas Notovitch. P.S. In the course of his travels he took many curious photographs, but when he came to examine the negatives on his return to India, he was dismayed to find that they were absolutely destroyed. Well, that's rather uncanny and unfortunate, isn't it?